tell the truth.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to the channel. Let's get into it. This is the Information Man. What I like to say right now is I want to shout out the real Dana because I got some clips that I got from her channel. I want to give her credit. She had an interview with Judge Joe Brown about this very issue around Karmelo Anthony and whether he has a leg to stand on in terms of self-defense. And she frequently has Judge Joe Brown on her show weekly talking about a variety of different issues. So I want to shout her out and give her credit. You can definitely see this full video on her channel, but let me highlight some of the things that he said that I think is very important. One, very important. When you get stopped by the police, they always are supposed to read you your Miranda rights, which is you have the right to be silent, and anything that you say can be used against you in a court of law. Where Judge Joe Brown has an issue with Karmelo is the fact that he said that Karmelo might have ran his mouth too much when he asked the officers, can I use self-defense in this situation? Now, he admitted that he did the deed. He didn't say that he did not do the deed. He didn't run away, but they did arrest him, and he started talking. This is what's bad about it in terms of what Judge Joe Brown just said, or what you're going to hear him say in this video today, is that they can use anything that you say to diffuse your case for self-defense. So you got to really be quiet until you see a lawyer. Now, he is a minor. Let's keep this in mind. Because he's 17 years old, he's a minor. Police should know better than to start pumping a teenager for information when he doesn't even have his family there as well. So let's just keep that in mind. I want to go into this clip and let you hear what Judge Joe Brown said himself about the pros and cons of the leg that he has to stand on when it comes to stand your own ground. So let's get into this right now. I hope everybody out there is doing well. And let's hear Joe Brown, Judge Joe Brown. Y'all know him.
After Anthony was placed inside the police vehicle, he asked an officer if McCaff was going to be okay and if what happened could be considered self-defense. Now, attorneys, Anthony.
Stop right there a second. He went wrong. He ran his mouth off too much. He had the witnesses going for him. But if he did that, then what happens is he just quasi removed his defense, because self-defense says you can't escalate the force used unless there is disparate strength between the person who is attacked and the
So basically what Judge Joe Brown is saying here, to get it to say it plain, is that if you are under attack, you can't use force against the other person without it being an equal force. Meaning just this. If someone's fighting you with bare knuckles, then you can fight them back with your bare knuckles. But once you bring a firearm into it, and in this case, a knife, and that person doesn't have a knife, then it becomes an imbalance in that battle, right? He also is going to talk about if you got an old lady who doesn't have a lot of strength and a grown, strong man is trying to manhandle her, so to speak, and she has to use something like a knife, that would be reasonable, because given the fact that the man is overpowering compared to her. But you got to look at it this way. People are saying that the McCaffrey brothers were big dudes, right? So that's what he's basically saying here. And let me just play it so you can hear it for yourself again. But let's go with this again. Judge Joe Brown, break it down.
Unless there is disparate strength between the person who is attacked and the person who is the attacker. In other words, a little old lady could potentially use some deadly force to stop a real strong young guy from doing her in. But two young, strong guys are not supposed to escalate physical force where it is of non-lethal violence into using a weapon and becoming lethal violence.
Lethal violence, because technically, if Karmelo Anthony would have kept this at just being a knuckle bar fight, in my last video, I said, gone are the days where these kids fight with their knuckles to live to see the next day. So if he just would have kept it at being a fight of punching with the bare knuckles, kicking, punching, whatever, then if something would have happened where Austin McCaffrey would have been deleted based on him punching him in a bare knuckle situation, then that he's saying that maybe the argument for self-defense would have a little bit more weight to it based on it being an equal situation. But when you bring in a weapon, a knife, or a firearm, that's when you escalate the situation to a whole nother level. But this is the thing, though. He's not saying that Karmelo Anthony can't have a leg to stand on for self-defense. He's just saying that the fact that weapons was added, and then talking to the police and saying things like, can I be silent, remain silent, because they will use things against you in a court of law. Let me let you hear the rest of Judge Joe Brown.
See, he shot his mouth off. He was doing good, and then he opened his mouth. So now he gave them some cause to say, okay, this is a homicide where the situation was escalated. He's an athlete. Why didn't he just respond with physical force? And if the assailant escalated it beyond what was an exchange of physical force, unarmed physical force, then he could escalate to match it.
Now, everybody, let me stop right there. Let me show you what the law says about this situation. Okay? Let's see what the law says. I hear what Judge Joe Brown is saying, and he's on to something here. But I want you all to see what the law says about this. Let me put this up right here. I've read this on my other channel. That's the Truth Media Raw channel. Make sure you go over there and subscribe to Truth Media Raw. It's my other channel where I have short videos. I'm going to read this again. Texas law specifies or specifically focuses on stand your ground. It's a law that allows individuals to use deadly force in self-defense without the duty of retreat if they reasonably believe it is necessary to protect themselves or others from imminent harm, and they are in a place where they have the right to be. Well, I said this before, Karmelo Anthony did have the right to be at that track and field event because, quite honestly, everybody, he was a track and field athlete. There was a reason why he was there. I don't know why it had to be this big deal about him being near their tent or setting in the tent when nothing was stolen. He didn't steal anything from anybody. And this whole thing was a shame. Again, let's go to Judge Joe Brown and get his perspective. I just read you the law, okay? The law of the land in a place called Texas, okay? And so I just want to make sure that we're on the same page there, everybody. Peace and respect. Definitely subscribe to the channel, hit the bell notification. Let's get back to this.
So you saying that?
In other words, two guys are having a fist fight, and one of them pulls out a gun and shoots the other. That's going to be a murder case because the violence got escalated to another level that was uncalled for. Mm-hmm. If one guy pulls out a gun, the other guy pulls out a gun and shoots him, fine. If it's a felony murder, like I was describing, okay. But he ran his mouth off and said, I did it, and he got me scared.
Now, this is a great point that Judge Joe Brown, I like Judge Joe Mathis as well, everybody.
Tell the truth.
But Judge Joe Brown brings up a very good point here. If you have a guy that you're in a fight with, and you're getting the most of him, and then he pulls out a weapon like a firearm or maybe even a knife in the case in this situation, and now it's been escalated, and now you would then have the right to pull out a weapon yourself, such as either a knife or a firearm, and now you would have the right to go back with them because you're meeting force with force. Basically, you're meeting the moment that requires you to take it to that level because now he's just pulled out a knife or a firearm. So now you grab your firearm or your knife, and now it becomes an equal battle to whatever level it takes it to. This is what I believe Judge Joe Brown is saying here. Let's get back to him.
because he went in. That's not an
He
excuse.
he shouldn't have said nothing. But
Should have
again,
kept his mouth shut. So
but
yeah,
what that can that be used?
Let me move this back just a little bit just to hear this again, everybody. This is very important. Let's go.
to another level that was uncalled for.
Mhm.
If one guy pulls out a gun, the other guy pulls out a gun and shoots him, fine. If it's a felony murder, like I was describing, okay. But he ran his mouth off and said, I did it, and he got me scared because he went in. That's not an excuse.
So basically, Judge Joe Brown is saying that this is why you should remain silent in a situation like this. But let's keep this in mind. Karmelo Anthony is a minor. He's 17 years old, so he's still a minor. He still has a brain that hasn't fully developed. We're dealing with teenagers that were fighting and scuffling with each other to the point that one teenager, in this case, Austin McCaffrey, lost his life because Karmelo Anthony did stab him. And that cannot be denied. There's no excuses for that. It's wrong. I feel that it's wrong. However, the young man said that he was defending himself. And so we have to also look at this from both perspectives, okay? But Judge Joe Brown is giving solid advice here. You really should remain silent, because if you say something that seems a little weird to the police, they're going to use it against you in a court of law and make it seem like you were just trying to find a way out of the situation, whether it being an organic question in which you asked because you truly were defending for your life. And let's say, hey, Karmelo felt bullied. Let's say, and then let me just say this too as well. He has representation that's come out talking on his behalf. You've got the Next Generation Action Network, and they're saying that there was no relationship between Karmelo Anthony and Austin McCaffrey. They're asking people not to put out misinformation, that there was no incident at a party. I know people were talking about a cell phone being broken, but the family is saying that there was no incident at some party or something about a girlfriend. And definitely they're saying that he didn't even know this guy. Now, I made a statement on my last video that I wouldn't be surprised if he had a run-in with these guys before. That doesn't mean that he knew them. I'm just saying that I wouldn't be surprised if something happened with him and these guys before. That's an opinion. That's not facts. I'm not saying it's facts. It's just me wondering,
tell the truth,
what would escalate it to where it went. Let's get back to Judge Joe Brown right now, shall we? I appreciate all of you listening.
He shouldn't have said nothing. But again,
kept his mouth shut. So
but
yeah.
what that can that be used against him?
Yeah, it can. Anything you say can and may be used in evidence against you. The Fifth Amendment. You have a right to remain silent. You have a right to consult with an attorney. You have no obligation to make a statement, but if you do, anything you say can and may be used against you.
That's facts, everybody. That's facts. So that's why I was saying you got to remain silent. Once again, I get what the judge is saying, but this is a judge of experience. This is a young man, a young boy, teenager, 17-year-old minor, and Karmelo Anthony, who probably doesn't know the law that well, or maybe he just was nervous. Okay, he knew what he did. He was nervous, and in his mind, hey, I'm letting the cops know right now that I was fighting for my life too. That it was self-defense. I can't blame the young man, the young kid, for saying that. Judge Joe Brown. Let's get to the next video, because Judge Joe Brown is going to talk about the good old-fashioned way of how things used to be, where, like I said in my last video, there used to be a time when you got into a fight with a bully at school, you could use your knuckles to fight him, and even if you got your butt beat, you know what? Even if you got beat in that fight, you lived to see the next day, right? Nowadays, these kids, they don't fight. They don't put up the dukes. They don't battle against the bullies. They just simply say, let me go home, get a firearm, or get something, and do A, B, and C to somebody. So gone are those days where you had
Tell the
real,
truth.
straight up, bare bones knuckle fights. Now, I'm not trying to promote violence here, but that's just the way it is. I'm a Gen Xer. That's how I grew up. You had a fight. Sometimes you won, sometimes you lost, but at least you got to live and you didn't get put in a grave.
Tell the truth.
Let me let you hear what Judge Joe Brown had to say about this particular philosophy when he's asked by the real Dana. Check this out.
Huh?
They're punks. They don't duke it out, bam, bam, bam. They don't take out bullies. And the bullies are sissies. They like to pop caps on people instead of going toe to toe. And see, oh my God, we have to protect the children from bullying, and it's up to the teachers and the police and the parents. No, it's not. It's never been in human history. It's up to the kids. It's a rite of passage. So we don't encourage our kids to take on bullies. They get protected. They feel entitled, and they have a whole lot of punks that get real scared, and they pull knives out and stab somebody instead of busting them right in the mouth. We forgot. And it's not a racial thing either. White, black, brown, red, yellow. You remember Back to the Future where McFly goes back in time and he runs into his dad when dad is in high school, and dad has been bullied since that time until McFly's presence by Biff, and he causes dad to stand up. Boom, dad knocks Biff out because he gets in a good blow right to his chin. And when McFly gets back to the present, guess what? Biff works for dad, and Biff is dad's flunky because dad stood up to the bully. We don't teach that anymore.
What do you think about what he just said, everybody? Do you agree with Judge Joe Brown on the idea that we're teaching the kids to be dependent on someone saving them and not teaching kids to stand up, to take on bullies, to not allowing themselves to back down and be pushed around? You know, the judge is saying something that's very old school. He's a baby boomer, but those days are, I got to be honest, they're over. Okay. We just don't live in that kind of society anymore. Even if we want to see that come back, even if we want our kids to be tough and to learn rites of passage, as he said, through the process of dealing with a bully. And the only way to get a bully to leave you alone is sometimes you got to do a little bit of boxing. Sometimes you got to show them you're not to be played with. I mean, in some of the neighborhoods that some of us grew up in, this was the way. However, we really don't want our kids to have to go through this sort of stuff, but it is a reality and it makes you wonder. This is what Judge Joe Brown is saying. Let me also bring up something else in the law. I want to remind you, everybody, because this is going to come up in the next clip I'm going to play you, and this is Kyle Rittenhouse. The thing that's the hypocrisy about Kyle Rittenhouse is that he did some serious stuff. You see, Karmelo Anthony, he stabbed, unfortunately, Austin McCaffrey and took his life, and that's a very unfortunate situation. But when you look at someone like Kyle Rittenhouse, who got off for not only taking the life of one person, but two people. I mean, let's just read right here.
Tell the truth.
Yes, Kyle Rittenhouse was acquitted of all charges, including homicide, after pleading self-defense in the 2021 trial following the courageous shooting, and the jury agreed that he acted in self-defense. I also had this posted up in my other channel, the Truth Media Raw channel. 17-year-old Kyle Rittenhouse was, folks, justified taking the life of two people with an AR-15 because he said he felt threatened, even though he was the one who drove across state lines into another state, and he was looking to confront people. Then to find out this is something you got to also remember too. Kyle Rittenhouse took the life of two people with a whip and a firearm that he was too young to have. He had no business with the firearm because he was underage for the age to actually have that rifle in his possession as someone that owns it and the whole 9 yards. So he was underage, should have never even had a gun on him. So when people say, well, why did Karmelo Anthony have a knife on him? When people say that, keep this in mind. Kyle Rittenhouse had a weapon on him that takes the life of people just like that, and took the life of 2 people, and had a firearm that he had no registry to, had no business having it, and he was also underage for it, okay? So I just want to give some perspective here. Another thing I want to bring up in the law here is this. I found this in the law. In Texas, as a 17-year-old, can a 17-year-old generally carry a knife, but with some restrictions? Specifically, it's illegal for someone under age 18 to carry a location restricted knife outside of a certain specific location, like their home, property, or vehicle, unless under a supervision of a parent or guardian. Well, Kyle Rittenhouse had a weapon that he did not have a right to have because he was underage, and he did not have a guardian for that weapon. So if we're going to put this on Karmelo, then we got to look at everybody who has also maybe broken the law in this sense. Let's go back to this. The supervision of a parent or guardian. According to Texas law, location restricted knives are generally defined as those longer than 5.5 inches. Okay, I would definitely like to know, when this all comes out in the wash and the autopsy and everything, what was the size of the knife that he had. Now, check this out. In Texas as a state, they let people have knives, particularly if you're an adult. It's legal. So check this out. In Texas, it is generally legal for adults to carry knives on their person with someone restriction on where the knife with a blade, how long it is. If it's longer than 5.5 inches, it can be carried. Knives with blades shorter than 5.5 inches are generally unrestricted and can be carried anywhere. This is what's going on in the state of Texas as far as you being able to just literally carry this sort of stuff. Okay. Let me go further with this by introducing, how can I say this? He's not the lawyer. I don't think he's a friend of the family, but he works for the Next Generation Action Network. He had a press conference. I think the family, he's working with the family. Let me say that. He's working with the family. The family know who he is. They gave him permission to give a statement just not that long ago, a few days ago. And this is what he had to say. And I want you all to listen to this very carefully, because I think he makes some legitimate points here about the situation with Karmelo Anthony. Let me also say that it's been put out there that Karmelo Anthony's family is receiving death threats, racial threats, and the whole 9 yards since this whole thing has gone down with what their son has done. They are being harassed, and they are staying to themselves at home. This is what's happening. You got people on social media that are coming after them. I'm just laying it out. This brother right here that you're going to hear, he also talked about that in the recent press conference that they gave about Karmelo Anthony and the whole situation. Let me let you hear this now. Check this out.
Karmelo Anthony, from the beginning, has continued to display his self-defense claim. And I believe that in America, I always tell this, and I'm just going to speak truth to power in this situation. It is crazy that America tells us to accept the self-defense claim of George Zimmerman, Kyle Rittenhouse, and so many other people. But when the shoe is on the other foot, that claim is absurd. And I just got to call a spade a spade. No matter what my personal views of a case may be, it is quite contradicting for America to come back and say, oh, Kyle Rittenhouse can have it, George Zimmerman can have it, all of these individuals that don't look like the color of my skin can't have it. In the state of Texas, we live in a state where yet you can walk around with the permitless carry, you can walk around with a brass knuckles, you can walk around with a knife, you can walk around with all these things. AK-47 in the state of Texas. And then as soon as you see a black person exercise those rights, we now have a problem. And that's not me spitting hate or race or bigotry. That's the facts.
Tell the truth.
What can we say, everybody? He is speaking facts.
Tell the truth.
Yes, he is. Definitely speaking facts. This whole situation is a sad situation.
Tell the
I
truth.
hope that the young man, Karmelo Anthony, will get his day in court. And another thing that Judge Joe Brown said, I want to bring this up. Judge Joe Brown said something else. You know that Karmelo Anthony is on a $1 million bond or bail. Kyle Rittenhouse didn't have $1 million bail when he did what he did. Okay. George Zimmerman didn't have that. I don't even think Daniel Penny had that when he choked out that young man in New York who had mental health problems. He was homeless. But this young man has $1 million bond. They feel like the bond is too high. Another thing that Judge Joe Brown brought up that I think we need to also examine is that the charge of first-degree murder, and murder is a legal term. He's saying that Judge Joe Brown believes that they are overcharging Karmelo Anthony, that it should be first-degree murder is more like a crime of passion sort of thing, he was saying. He said he should really be getting, I think, second degree, not first degree. So he feels that they have overcharged Karmelo Anthony in this situation, and that the bond that they posted for him is way too high, especially when you compare it to people like Kyle Rittenhouse, the George Zimmermans of the world, the Daniel Pennies of the world. Double standard in American society. It has always been that way, a double standard that we can't deny exists. So with that said, everybody, this is the Information Man Show. Do me the greatest favor, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell of notification, and everybody tell somebody that you love them, because you know what? You never know. We're all here on borrowed time. With that said, thank you, and peace and respect, and we'll be back with more of these hot fire videos. Peace.